Hello, everyone. I hope you're keeping well and enjoyed what was a wonderful game on Saturday. It was a game that had so much emotion to it, from anger to disappointment to euphoria at the end to fear when Bournemouth were at 2-2 and seemed to have all the momentum and we were slightly on the back foot. But also, I thought it was a game with a lot of moving parts from both managers. A lot of important changes that they both made throughout the game, a lot of things that Bournemouth did really well, a lot of things that we did really well to impose ourselves on Bournemouth. And that gives you the structure to go and win a game. Tactics don't win you games, but they give you a platform, a structure to show quality, to either create stuff or defend properly. And I thought that was, in amongst all the emotion, I thought that there was a lot of detail in there that was equally as important as the emotion of the day. So how did both teams set up? Luton set up in their usual back three with Cal Naismith and Sonny Bradley and Reece Burke in the back three. But the important change was that Cal Naismith was on the left of the three and Sonny Bradley through the middle. The wing backs were James Bree and Amari Bell. The midfield three, Alan Campbell, Pelly Ruddock, picked for their athletic ability, their intensity in and out of possession, and Jordan Clark, obviously everyone knows how good he is. And I wouldn't read too much into how I've set them up there in the kind of triangle shape. It was very flexible, especially out of possession. And then the front two, we went with the direct physical threat of Cameron Jerome alongside Elijah Adebayo, who of course would have started. And Bournemouth they went 4-3-3. Jack Stacey right back, Cahill and Lloyd Kelly centre halves, Leif Davis on the left, then Jefferson Lerma, Lewis Cook and Emilio Marcondes making up a kind of midfield three in a 4-3-3. Ryan Christie off the right, Jaden Anthony off the left, and the dangerous Dom Solanke up front. And the first thing to really think about from a tactical point of view that I noticed was how much space Bournemouth were finding in wide areas and how they were able to overload us in wide areas. Now, when you're playing a 5-3-2 like we were and defending like this, is with our usual man marking of Pelly Ruddock on Emiliano Marcondes, Alan Campbell stepping on to Jefferson Lerma and Lewis Cook here being marked by Jordan Clark. The space is always going to be, especially when a team is playing 4-3-3 against a 5-3-2 or 3-5-2, whatever you want to call it, is always going to be wide, around this side here and around that side there. And that's what every team knows. Every team will try against us to find those wide spaces. But what Bournemouth were able to do really effectively was create overloads in those areas that then allowed them to advance. And secondly, they were able to switch the play far too easily, which then allowed them to create 2v1s on the outside. And this was something that was very consistent throughout the first half. But the first question to answer was, why was Cal Naismith playing at left centre-back? Because against Blackpool and in quite a few games previously, Cal Naismith has been through the middle of the back three. Why was he out on the left? And the reason for that was because we wanted our wing-backs to engage a bit higher up the pitch. Now, if you remember against Blackpool, something that we did a lot of was Amari Bell would drop very deep, and Carlos Mendes Gomez, who was playing inside left, he would drop very deep because we felt that we wanted to funnel them down our left side and down their right side. And that allowed Amari Bell to then protect Sonny Bradley so that Cal Naismith could be through the middle of the back three to dictate things, to play line breaking passes that allowed us to play forwards. But we really felt here that Amari Bell, we want him stepping high onto Jack Stacey. We don't want to give Jack Stacey time and space because we know what happens when you give Jack Stacey time and space. And what that means then is as Amari Bell engages, Cal Naismith needs to be 1v1 with Ryan Christie. Now, would you rather have Cal Naismith doing that 1v1 job in wide areas, quite isolated, or Sonny Bradley? You definitely want Cal Naismith doing that because he's much more proficient in terms of defending wide and isolated. So that's why we had Cal Naismith on the left and Sonny Bradley through the middle. It was mostly an out of possession orientated decision rather than a more in possession orientated decision as it was against Blackpool, where we wanted him through the middle for his ball playing ability. So that was why we wanted Amari Bell stepping high. And as you can see here we've dealt with this wide area quite well. So we've got Amari Bell stepping really high. We've got Cameron Jerome here, who's just been on Gary Cahill. Alan Campbell's on Jefferson Lerma. Jordan Clark's on Lewis Cook. We've kind of created this 4v4 in wide areas. And that's exactly what we want. As we can see here, again, Amari Bell is stepped high onto Jack Stacey, and we've got the other four covered in there. So we're going man orientated. We've got 4v4 out there. There's no overload for us to deal with. But what was happening quite a lot was that Amari Bell was not able to make up that ground. because it's a lot of ground. For Amari Bell to cover that ground from left wing back all the way up to Jack Stacey every single time, especially when he's being pinned back by Ryan Christie, it's very difficult. So here you can see Amari Bell hasn't done that. So what does that mean for us? That means that Elijah Adebayo is split between Gary Cahill over here and the right back Jack Stacey, and that creates a 2v1 in Bournemouth's build-up phase. The effect of this is then that Jordan Clark is thinking, right, I have to come across in here. And that leaves Jefferson Lerma free. As you can see here, Alan Campbell is on Emiliano Marcondes, who's playing on the left of the 4-3-3, and Pelly Ruddock is somewhere around there. So this immediately creates Jefferson Lerma being free. What does this mean? It means that when Bournemouth get the ball wide, Amari Bell steps this time onto Ryan Christie, who's the dropping right winger. Pelly Ruddock is over here, when really he needs to be stepping onto there, because he's thinking about, right, Dom Solanke's in there. Lewis Cook is the player who, in terms of the structure, in terms of the setup, he should be on, but he's on the far side over there. And that meant that Bournemouth were able to find that pass in there and then switch the play out to the far side and then advance with it down this side. And that's them effectively using a 4-3-3 against our 5-3-2. Is can we draw Luton to one side and then switch the play out the other way, create 2v1s and advance through there. And from our point of view, when we're playing a 5-3-2 or whatever you want to call it, 3-5-2, our job, our aim is to make sure that they can't switch the play. And that's something we usually do very well. We pen teams in, we make sure they can't switch it out, because we know that the space for the other team is going to be on the far side to the ball. But we didn't do that very well in the first half, I didn't think. And they were able to switch the play out very easily through Jefferson Lerma and creating these little 3v2s in wide areas. Again, here's Lewis Cook, here's Jack Stacey, the right back, and here's Ryan Christie, who's dropped from right wing. And they're able to play this one in there. The ball then goes into Lewis Cook. Jack Stacey overlaps around the outside, and Lewis Cook plays that one in there. And that's them really effectively using this 3v2 in wide areas that they were able to exploit, especially down the right side, which was a really important problem for us to solve. And on this right side again in build up, you can see Elijah Adebayo has gone to press Gary Cahill. We're doing the man marking in the middle of the pitch with these three doing Bournemouth's midfield three, but Jack Stacey is free again, so the ball can just go in there into Lewis Cook and be bounced out. Jack Stacey then has all this space to progress because our midfield three are so high up the pitch, marking Bournemouth's midfield three. And that was a real problem for us to solve. And again, with this quick switcher play, you can see how it created Bournemouth spaces in wide areas. So here you can see Pelly Ruddock has just been defending out on this right-hand side for Luton. That means he's stuck over there. Alan Campbell is now thinking about Jefferson Lerma, and Jordan Clark has stepped out to Emiliano Marcondes. But what that does is leave Lewis Cook free, which then leaves Luton with this 3v2 in wide areas, in a wide area there. Because now Amari Bell is on Ryan Christie, Cal Naismith is on Lewis Cook, but Jack Stacey is free to advance. Now, what would stop that is if Luton made sure that they didn't allow Bournemouth to switch the play too quickly, so that Pelly Ruddock can carry on defending over there. There's no overload on the far side because they can't get the ball to that side. But by allowing Bournemouth to quickly switch the play, both from left and then left to right, to the right-hand side, it means that Luton's midfield three has too big a distance to cover. It can't shift across to then create that 3v3, and allows Bournemouth to exploit what is an overload on the right side and use Jack Stacey yet again to get up the pitch and progress. But really what it was Bournemouth were able to do this. They were able to build out. They were able to switch the play too easily, use the fullbacks to advance, especially down the right side. But in reality, what it didn't mean too much, because they didn't show the quality in the final third, and that was down to us defending the box really well, defending 1v1 really well, especially down our right side with James Bree and Reece Burke, especially Reece Burke stepping out really well out of the back three to engage Leif Davis, who was sometimes inverted. So it didn't mean a massive deal in terms of, obviously they didn't score from it, but what it did is allowed them to control the game and put a bit of pressure on us. Now, obviously, we were outstanding. We moved the ball really well, and in selecting Pelly Ruddock and Alan Campbell as our midfield two, we weren't going to get ball progression from them. They weren't going to play line breaking passes into forward areas. They weren't going to create loads because they're not those types of players. We picked them for their athletic ability, their out of possession, how good they are. In possession, they can attack second balls. And that was why we selected Cameron Jerome as opposed to a Carlos Mendes Gomez or a Fred Onyedinma to play alongside Elijah Adebayo. Because they're so organised, they're so athletic, their press is so organised, we felt that we were then, where we would hurt them was by going direct into our front two and being physical, running off second balls, and that's how we would break their first line of pressure. We weren't going to play through their first line of pressure, we were going to go over their first line of pressure, get it up the pitch and play from there, and then use Jordan Clark, use the wing-backs, who could then go from there to create chances. And that was what we did really well. Although our second goal obviously came from a moment of real quality from Naismith. And this is absolutely outstanding from Naismith because he recognises that Bournemouth's front three have pressed and they've stepped high onto our back three. Well, Pelly Ruddock has kind of rotated out into the back three. And that there's all this space in there because Bournemouth have pressed, they haven't supported their press. There's no midfielders coming behind it to support, to make sure that if the first line gets beaten, there's a second player and a third player to deal with it. And Cal Naismith shows what Cal Naismith does brilliantly, which is to beat the first line of pressure. And this is the effect of that front two, because that front two with Jerome and Elijah Adebayo, who were both absolutely outstanding, and especially Cameron Jerome, I want to point out. He's had a bit of a rough time so far at the club, hasn't played as well as he'd probably expect of himself, but he's been outstanding. He was absolutely outstanding on Saturday with the way he played. And you can see here, Gary Cahill is thinking about Elijah Adebayo because we've gone so direct into Elijah and he's been absolutely brilliant at holding the ball. And Lloyd Kelly is also split because he's thinking about Cameron Jerome. It's really poor from Jefferson Lerma. He has to cut that lane off. But Cal Naismith finds that pass in there to Alan Campbell between the central midfielders and then obviously scores a wonderful goal. So Bournemouth hurt us in the first half, using their wide overloads, using their fullbacks to overlap and underlap, creating 3v2s against our 5-3-2 in wide areas and switching the play out really easily. We hurt them because we were very direct into our front two. They gave Gary Cahill and Lloyd Kelly a really rough time and they struggled to deal with them. We ran second balls off them. We got free kicks, we got throw-ins, and that got us up the pitch to then go and create chances. And that was where we hurt them. So what did we do in the second half? What was the change that Nathan Jones made to try and deal with this wide overload? Now at half time, in the second half to begin with, they carried on doing it, and I felt that it was still too easy for them to create those 3v2s in wide areas and then advance through the fullbacks, especially on the right side. And I think that was a fundamental thing with the shape. Was Bournemouth just moved the ball so well, it's really difficult to squeeze them to one side and stop them from switching the play. But we switched to a five with a front three and then two central midfielders, with Fred Onyedinma coming on. But the problem that gave us was that it then took one out from the middle of the pitch, which then almost straight away, when Fred came on and we put Pelly and Jordan Clark in a two and kept the back three, was Jefferson Lerma won the ball back and just had all this space in here. And that was straight after Fred came on. And very quickly then Nathan Jones changed the system for the second time and moved Cal Naismith into the holding midfield role, just so that we had someone in this space in here. So then Pelly Ruddock can step high with confidence and Jordan Clark can step high with confidence, knowing that Cal Naismith is in there to defend it. So that was the reason why out of possession, and as well, of course, another reason why we made the change to 4-3-3, probably the key reason, was to spread the front three so that we made sure we eliminated those wide overloads that Bournemouth had. But firstly, why did we do it? What was the positive decision behind that? Because we did that when we were 2-1 up. It wasn't like at 2-2 we changed it and reacted. The reason we did that, in terms of us with the ball, was obviously Jack Stacey here is really high up. He's playing really high up the pitch, especially with Bournemouth chasing the game. So he's going to be doing all this overlapping and everything. And what we felt was that there was space behind Jack Stacey when we won the ball back, so that Fred could then attack that space in there. If we could find Fred, then we could get him running at Gary Cahill at right centre back immediately after we've won the ball back, and that worked because almost straight away this scenario arose. We won the ball back. Jack Stacey's caught high. Fred Onyedinma has space to run into. That gets us up the pitch. We have that outlet. And throughout the game, our outlet had been direct into Elijah and Cameron Jerome. Now this just changed the dynamic of our attack a little bit. It meant we had a ball carrier, someone who could really drive up the pitch, go 1v1, get us territory, and get us as far away from our own goal as possible. As I mentioned, it was really important in terms of eliminating those wide overloads. And as you can see here now, Fred Onyedinma is right there on Jack Stacey, which means Elijah Adebayo can just concentrate on the inside pass into Gary Cahill. He's no longer having to split and go towards Jack Stacey in there. He's just worried about Gary Cahill because Fred Onyedinma is in there. That then allowed Amari Bell to then do what he was doing from left back, which was step on to Ryan Christie, and then we create the 4v4 in there. So straight away, this changed to 4-3-3, spread our front three, gave us more width when we were defending, which meant if Bournemouth did switch to play, it was much easier for us to deal with because we have more cover in wide areas. Now, what was the sacrifice to that? It meant that we took a centre-half out. So for Dom Solanke, maybe a little bit more space, but not necessarily because Cal Naismith and Reece Burke and then Gabby Osho, when they're playing on the sides of the three, actually defend a lot like fullbacks. So it's a difficult one. And then obviously we lose. Cameron Jerome is defending a bit wider, which means that when we win the ball back, we've got a little bit less centrally. But I thought this was a necessary change. We had to make it because Bournemouth was so dangerous in terms of building out like that. And again, it doesn't win you games, that wide overload in build-up. It doesn't win you the game, but what it does is allow you to control the game. It allows you to switch to play, allows you to build pressure, which is not what you want, especially when the other team has momentum. Just breaking down Bournemouth's second goal. What happened in that goal was, again, they switched to play. But why was that? Because we changed to 4-3-3. And what it came from was Cameron Jerome was really brave and tried to win the ball really high when he was playing right wing. Jordan Clark then had to go, he didn't quite get there. Jordan Clark had to go across. Cal Naismith's gone onto Marcondes in there. And Bournemouth's change, which was bringing on the left winger, which then allowed Ryan Christie in here to fill the number 10 pocket. So what we've done is we've got our midfield three in Pelly, Clark and Naismith all on one side, which then freed up Ryan Christie to then go switch to play out to the right, and then they delivered into the box. And that's how a system, a tactic can provide the foundation for you to score a goal. It allowed them to move the ball into a certain area. They were then able to get it across and show quality to score. But overall, I think the change of shape was what I think really helped us in terms of eliminating those wide overloads. And what was also really important is the personnel within that shape. So Cal Naismith and Henry Lansbury both on the pitch in that midfield too, giving us that control, giving us that ability to dictate, to build a bit of pressure, play quality forward passes, keep the ball and just build. So that when Bournemouth have all the momentum at 2-2, they've just equalised from 2-0 down. It just allowed us to keep the ball and just stifle their pressure a little bit, which was really important, I felt. And really, and that allowed us to then go and do what we did. We built that pressure, and as Nathan Jones said in his post-match interview, was in that last 5 minutes or so, we looked like the ones who are going to go and do that. And of course, mentality plays a huge part in that. You've got to be brave enough to go and believe that from 2-0 up to then equalising it 2-2, blowing a 2-goal lead, you can then go and win the game. That takes tremendous mental strength, but also tactically, I thought Nathan Jones got it spot on in terms of changing to that wider front three so that we could defend a bit wider, but also exploit space a little bit more in behind, with Fred just being so brave with his ball carrying ability. What a day it was. As I mentioned at the start, it was a game of emotion. And just pure joy at the end. It was incredible, and I haven't stopped watching back Cal's finish, and I probably won't stop watching it back till the end of the season. And it's kind of the moments that we live for as fans. But I hope this gave a little bit more detail in terms of the slight changes that Scott Parker and Nathan Jones made with us going 5-3-2, Bournemouth switching the play really well, exploiting the wide areas, us then changing, Bournemouth changing to 4-2-3-1, creating that number 10, Jamal Lowe going out to the right, then getting the 2-2 from that almost, and then us obviously doing what we did in the 97th minute. So I hope that was useful. And as always, any suggestions about any more detail or anything, please feel free to message me or comment, and I'll be happy to add anything else in. And hopefully we can build some momentum from this and go on a really good run, because who knows where we can go this season. It's things are looking really exciting. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.